Three types of creativity. The chief enemy of creativity is good sense. Ah, Pablo Picasso. Wow. The value placed on the creativity in modern times has led to a range of writers and thinkers trying to articulate what it is, how to stimulate it, and why it is important. It was while serving on a committee convened by the Royal Society to assess what impact machine learning would likely have on the society that I first encountered the theories of Margaret Boden. Boden is an original thinker who, over the decades, has managed to fuse many different disciplines. She is a philosopher, psychologist, physician, AI expert, and cognitive scientist. In her 80s now, with white hair flying like sparks and an ever-active brain, she enjoys engaging with the question of what these tin cans, as she likes to call computers, might be capable of. Tin cans, yes. To this end, she has identified three different types of human creativity. Wow, easy, right? Exploratory creativity involves taking what is already there and exploring its out edges, extending the limits of what is possible while remaining bound by the rules. Bach's music is a culmination of a journey that Baroque composers embarked on an exploratory by weaving together different voices. Sure. His prelude and fugues pushed their boundaries of what was possible before breaking the genre open and ushering in the classical era of Mozart and Beethoven. Yes. Renoir and Pissarro reconceived how we could visualize nature and the world around us, but it was Claude Monet who really pushed the boundaries, painting his water lilies over and over until his flecks of color dissolved into a new form of abstraction. Sure. Mathematics reveals in this type of creativity, the classification of finite simple group is a tour de force of exploratory creativity. Tour de force, starting from this simple definition of a group of symmetries, a structure defined by the four simple axioms. Mathematicians spend 150 years compiling the list of every conceivable element of symmetry. This effort culminated in the discovery of the monster simple group. It has more symmetries than there are atoms in the earth and yet fit into no pattern of other groups. This form of mathematical creativity involves pushing limits while adhering strictly to the rule of the game. Those who engage in it are like the geographical explorers who, even as they discover previously unknown territory, are still bound by the limits of our planet. Sure, within the domain of definition, right? Boden believes that exploration accounts for 97% of human creativity. This is also the sort of creativity at which computers excel. Pushing a pattern or a set of rules to an extreme is a perfect exercise for a computational mechanism that can perform many more calculations than the human brain can. Sure. But it is enough to yield a truly original creative act. When we hope for that, we generally imagine something more utterly unexpected. Sure. To understand Bodan's second type, combinational creativity. Yes, combination, the mathematics. Combinational creativity. Think of an artist thinking two completely different constructors and finding a way to combine them. Often the rules governing one will suggest an interesting new framework for the other. Combination is a very powerful tool in the realm of mathematical creativity. Sure. The eventual solution of the Poincaré conjecture, which describes the possible shapes of our universe, was arrived at by applying the very different tools used to understand flow over surfaces. In a leap of creative genius, Grigory Perelman landed at the unexpected realization that by knowing the way a liquid flows over a surface, one could classify the possible surface that might exist. My own research takes tools from number theory that have been used to understand primes and applies them to classify possible symmetries. The symmetry of geometric objects don't look at first sight anything like the numbers, but applying the language that has helped us to navigate the mysterious of the primes and replacing primes with a symmetrical object has revealed surprising new insight into the theory of symmetry. Sure. The arts have also benefited greatly from this form of cross-fertilization, right? So it's like a gamete to zygote, right? Zygote to gamete. Philip Glass took ideas he learned from the working with Ravi Shankar and used them to create the additive process that is the heart of his minimalist music. Zaha Hadid combined her knowledge of architecture with her love of the pure form of the Russian painter Kashmir Malevich to create a unique style of Carver sales buildings. Sure. In the cooking, creative master chefs have fused cuisines from the opposite ends of the globe. Yes. There are interesting hints that this sort of creativity might also be perfect for the world of AI. Really? Take an algorithm that plays a blues and combine it with the music of bowls and you will end up with a strange hybrid composition that might just create a new sound world. Of course, it could also be a dismal cacophony. The coder needs to find two genres that can be fused algorithmically in an interesting way. It is Boden's third form of creativity that is more mysterious and elusive. What she calls transformational creativity is behind those rare moments that are complete game changers. Sure. Every art form has these gear shifts. Think of Picasso and Cubism, Schoenberg and atonality, Joyce and modernism. Their phase changes, like when water suddenly goes from liquid to gas or solid. Right, good analogy. This was the image Goethe hit upon when he sought to describe how he was able to write the sorrow of young water. He devoted 2 years to wrestling with how to tell the story only for a straight event, a friend suicide to act as a sudden catalyst. At that instant, he recalled in the ditching under one height. The plan of water was found. The whole shot together from all directions and became a solid mass as the water in base, which is just at the freezing point, is changed by the slightest concussions into ice. Okay. At first glance, it would seem harder to program such a decisive shift, but consider that quite often these transformational moments hinge on the changing the rule of the game or dropping a long-held assumption. The square of number is always positive. Sure. All molecules comes in long lines, not chains. Music must be written inside a harmonic scale structure. Sure. Eyes go on the either side of the nose. There is a meta rule for this type of creativity. Meta rule. Start by dropping constraints and see what emerges. The creative act is to choose what to drop or what new constraint to introduce, such that you end up with a new thing of rule, a new thing of value. Wow. If I were asked to identify a transformational moment in mathematics, the creation of the square root of -1, yes, imaginary number, right? In the mid-16th century would be a good candidate. This was a number that many mathematicians believe did not exist. It was referred to as an imaginary number, yes, a dismissive term first used by Descartes to indicate that there was no such thing. I see. And yet, its creation did not contradict previous mathematics. It turned out it had been a mistake to exclude it. Now consider, if that error had persisted to today, would a computer come up with the concept of the square root of -1 if it were fed only data telling it that there is no number whose square could be negative? Wow. A truly creative act sometimes requires us to step outside the system and create a new reality. Sure. Moving to another field, right? Can a complex algorithm do that? The emergence of the romantic movement in music is in many ways a catalogue of rule breaking. Instead of hewing to closer key signatures as earlier composers had done, upstairs like a Schubert closed the shift keys in a way that deliberately defined expectations. Schumann left chords unresolved that Haydn or Mozart would have felt compelled to complete. Sure. Chopin composed dense moments of chromatic runs and challenged rhythmic expectation with his unusual accept passages and bending of tempos. The move from one musical era to another, from medieval to baroque to classical to romantic to impressionist to expressionist and beyond, is one long story of smashing the rule. Wow, smashing the rule. It almost goes without saying that the historical context plays an important role in allowing us to define something as new. Creativity is not an absolute but a relative activity. Yes, always relativistic, right? We are creative within our culture and frame of reference. I see. Could a computer initiate the kind of phase change that can move us into a new state? That seems a challenge. Algorithms learn how to act based on the data presented to them. Doesn't this mean that they will always be condemned to produce more of the same? As an epigraph of this chapter, I chose Picasso's observation that the chief enemy of creativity is a good sense. Yes, because you never think why it happens, you just sense it, and you never make a research. Therefore, you less invest your time to investigate. Therefore, you're using up your battery, and at the end there is no battery charge left. That sounds on the face of it very much against the spirit of the machine, and yet one can program a system to behave irrationally. One can create a meta rule that will instruct it to change the course, as we shall see. This is in fact something machine learning is quite good at. Really, wow.
And then yet another group